Now, the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNradio.com.
Hey, man, you know, I'm not really a company man, right? Like, I mean, yeah, the company might be listening. I mean, this is a pretty cool place to work, but, you know, I'm not the dude who's just going to come out here and just excitedly, without anybody letting me know what's going on, get you guys like, you know, hey, this ESPN thing's going on. You understand what I'm saying, right? You know, I'm not a fool. I'm not about to come set fire to anything on here, but at the same time, you know, there's some measure of dignity here. But I got to say, man, on behalf of ESPN, look at all this interest that you guys have in the Arthur Ashe Award for Courage for the no, not even the first time ever. I was about to say, I've never seen this much interest in any particular ESPY or the Arthur Ashe ESPY for Courage. But then there was last year when Michael Sam got the Arthur Ashe ESPY for Courage. And boy, there was a lot of interest in that one when it came up, right? Well, now we have this again where Caitlyn Jenner is set to receive the Arthur Ashe Award for Courage. And for those of you who are not familiar with who Caitlyn Jenner is, the last time you saw Caitlyn Jenner, she was a dude named Bruce. Right. The dude from the Olympics. The Kardashians. Yeah, him. Okay. It's Caitlyn now. Not sure if you saw the magazine cover, but things have changed. In the midst of these things changing, one of the things that happened was this announcement that he would receive the Arthur Ashe Award. Would receive the Arthur Ashe Award for Courage. Now, we talked about Caitlyn Jenner on the show last night, and I don't really feel so much like getting back into anything necessarily educational about this. I will say to begin that I do understand how it is that a lot of people struggle. I'm reluctant to use the word intellectually because I'm not talking necessarily to a bunch of intellectuals on this one, but I do understand how people struggle with the idea of having male organs and seeing yourself as a woman or being a woman. Like, I think the idea and the notion of being transgender is a little more complex for most people than it's given credit for being. Like, you go to the hospital, baby's born, check between the legs, take inventory, boom, there you go. You make a decision. Well, it's not really that simple, we've come to find out, right? So I get the idea that people don't really understand the notion of being transgender. And in fact, I understand to a degree the fact that people are kind of resistant to the idea. Like, I think there are a lot of people who basically look at this and say, so you're basically just deciding that you're a woman. Like, that's what I think most people look at that as. Hey, so you're just going to wake up one day and decide that you're a woman. I think that people struggle with that being something that, like, actually happens. I understand why people might struggle with it. I don't understand, like, the viciousness in the reaction to it, or just the need to absolutely discuss how odd and peculiar all of it is. I don't get that. I don't understand that, and it doesn't, like, reaffirm your manhood or your masculinity to me. And it's really men that seem to have the biggest problem, so that's why I put it in those terms. It doesn't reaffirm your masculinity. He's talking about how gross you think it is, whatever's going on with Caitlyn Jenner is. Like, it doesn't do anything for me. But something happened today that caused me a particular problem in observing it, is that somehow this internet meme started going around that showed a man named Noah Galloway. I'm not going to pretend like I'd ever heard of Noah Galloway today. I hadn't until today. But it shows him, he's a seriously injured war veteran, and the meme said that that gentleman was the runner-up for the Arthur Ashe Award for Courage. So, you know, the idea is to get you to justify this gentleman who's gone overseas and had limbs blown off. Justify the idea that he would not receive an award for courage, but someone who only decided that they wanted to be a woman would be the one to receive it. Like, that was the juxtaposition that was made, and it went out there, and a lot of people who matter of consequence sent that thing around, and it really became this discussion. And I go back to where I started this segment, which was, damn, when did y'all start caring so much about the ESPYs? Like, I had no idea that people cared this much about the ESPYs. Like, do y'all argue at y'all's houses about the other ESPYs? Like, when they decide who got the best play or who was the best team? Like, do y'all have ESPY watch parties like people do with the Oscars where you guys critically evaluated Drake's monologue last year? Like, wow, this is a thing for you guys. I mean, they've been showing that show on television now for more than 20 years, and this is what happens. But who am I kidding? Y'all don't give a damn about the ESPYs. Not like that. Like, hey, watch them when they come on. Like, don't get this mistaken. I'd like for you guys to watch the ESPYs. Like, that would be very good. Watch the ESPYs. If you're listening, anybody who signs a check, I'm out here boosting ratings. Anyway, watch the ESPYs if you want to. Don't tell me that you care this much. Don't tell me that this is a big deal to you. Like, just the notion of somebody getting this award. It's in the Congressional Medal of Freedom. It's the Arthur Ashe Award, all right? But the big thing I don't want you to do, hey, could you please not go out of your way to find anybody that you could decide had more courage than Caitlyn Jenner? Like, every time you say something stupid about this, you reaffirm the idea that it took a measure of courage to do this. Hey, man, think about all the things that you think that you're not willing to share with a room full of people. Now, imagine being America's Olympic hero and you believe or you feel that you are a woman. Yeah, you go tell the world that. And then go tell them that after you don't look like a dude anymore. Yeah, okay, there we go. Half of y'all would be scared to speak in front of an assembly of 7th graders. And I say that because I would be scared to speak in front of an assembly of 7th graders. They bad as hell. But half of y'all would be scared to speak in front of an assembly of 7th graders. But you talk about the courage it didn't take for Caitlyn Jenner to do this? Come on now, that's crazy. But crazier than that is to basically just find an injured veteran and to trot that dude out there, a picture of him, and try to act as though you're standing up in the name of principle. Because that's not what you're doing. Like, don't use that dude to shield the fact that you just can't come out and say, I think this whole transgender thing is weird and gross. Like, that's what a significant number of you think. And I know this because every time I talk to somebody that takes this sort of approach and we go farther and farther down the road, it basically just gets back to I don't like it. Like, that's it. That's what you got. And if you don't like it, I can't tell you to like it. I can tell you that the fact that you do or don't like it doesn't matter that much, but I can't tell you to like it. It's not my place, and I'm not going to try to tell you to like it. I won't. But don't take somebody that went through something for real and find a picture and put it up and hide behind that. Like, what kind of coward are you? Yeah, you want to tell me how much courage it took for this guy to go overseas and risk his life for his country? I'm right there with you. It took all that courage for him to do that. What is it taking for you to find a picture of it and use it for some nonsensical reasons? That didn't take him much at all. So you want to show me that you have all this support for the courage of our veterans when they come back. Hey, man, I don't know if you've been reading the newspaper, but I have a significant reason to believe that a lot of you guys who claim that you have so much support for our veterans don't really do so. Because if you did, we'd treat our veterans a little bit better. Right? Like, everybody likes when they bring somebody out to the football game and they put them in uniform and they wave, or you see the dude walking through the airport and they let them get on the plane first and people see them and thank them for their service and everything else. You know, you see them waiting in the uniform for their bags to come out and all of that. You go up there and shake their hands. Yeah, that's cool. Let me tell you something I'll never forget right now. I went to high school with a guy who went to Iraq. And I didn't realize he had gone to Iraq. I was just talking to him on Facebook one day. He hit me up a few years ago. And I asked him how he was doing. And he said, dude, I'm just trying to get over this PTSD. And I asked him if he'd been in Iraq. And he said, yes. And his response was, I didn't really have much to say about it. And he just said, I saw and did some bleeped up stuff. Like, that dude is struggling, right? Struggling. And there's a whole lot of cats that have gone over and come back, and they're like really doing bad, and a whole lot of people aren't paying attention. Like, that's an indisputable reality of things, right? So if you're going to talk about how we shouldn't talk about Caitlyn Jenner because we need to hail the courage of those people who have risked their lives, show me some receipts, man. Please, whatever you do, please do not hide behind the people who have gone overseas and given something of their lives for something that is bigger than them, no matter how you look at it, right? Please don't hide behind them in order to be as discriminatory as you would like to be against trans people. We don't believe you. You need more people.
Bomani.
Real quick before I move on, I talked about Caitlyn Jenner in the last segment. I want to make sure an important point that I made that got around was that there was this internet meme that said that Caitlyn Jenner was the winner of the Arthur Ashe Award for Courage at the ESPYs and that the runner-up was a veteran named Noah Galloway. I almost called him Noah Gallagher, which, you know, there are a lot of guys who may have served in the U.S. military, but Noah Gallagher clearly was not one of them. Anyway, Noah Galloway, he was the runner-up. He was not the runner-up. It's not really what they do on this ESPYs thing, at least as far as I'm concerned. There's not a runner-up. Like, that's not what it is. That whole thing is made up. And that's why it's so bothersome that somebody would take the time to try to make that. Don't do that, man. If you're going to be a bigot, be out and proud with it. Go ahead and do it. Like, you really believe that what it is wrong, you just say that it's wrong. But do not hide behind the people that fight for your country, as it is commonly phrased. Don't do that. Anyway, moving on to happier topics. The telephone number is 888-729-3776. Adrian Peterson has reported for organized team activities with the Vikings. We're going to find a whole lot out about how much respect for the game both of these sides have. Because I, like you, enjoyed the Adrian Peterson offseason of Adrian Peterson. You remember when Adrian Peterson's agent tried to run up on one of the executives from the Vikings, and Rich McKay, or our guy Rich McKay, was there and he happened to see it? Like, that's how wild it was getting, where his agent was running up on one of the suits because he wanted out of Minnesota. Now, unlike most people, I totally understood why it was that he wanted out of Minnesota. And the reason I say that I thought that he wanted out of Minnesota, and I thought it was fair, was that people make the argument that the Vikings paid Adrian Peterson not to play, therefore he should be grateful to them, as if they did that as a favor to him, right? Now, when Ray Lewis was arrested in, I guess, 2000, Art Modell and the Ravens, they bailed him out of jail. Now that right there, you owe that man a thank you. Hey, I mean, granted, not that Ray Lewis couldn't have possibly come up with the money to get out of jail, but I don't give a damn who you are. You bail me out of jail. We are BFFs. Yes. You bail me out of jail, you're the best friend I ever had, at least until I get back to the house. Anyway, with Adrian Peterson, he was just too good to get rid of. Like, they couldn't dispose of him. It was worth the risk to hang on, and they really probably thought that they could get him at any time during the year. At any time. That's what they thought. They're like, yo, at any time we can have this decision. The decision might come down, and we'll get Adrian Peterson back, and then we'll have our great running back. That's it right there. But nobody did Adrian Peterson any favors. What happened was the Vikings said that they were going to ride for Adrian Peterson, and then the block got hot, and then they got as far away from Adrian Peterson as they could without being stupid. And that was putting them on that little list that they had him on. Well, if you're Adrian Peterson, and you are a man of considerable ego, which he absolutely is. I mean, they have I don't know if you know this. Adrian Peterson is from a little town called Palestine, Texas. Not Palestine, Palestine. So he's from a little town called Palestine, Texas. And, like, Palestine, Texas is not far away from Paris, Texas. Paris, like France, except it ain't nothing like France. Like, I should tell you what kind of country we're talking about here. So he's from this little town called Palestine, Texas. And every year in Palestine, Texas, they have Adrian Peterson Day that involves a parade. Every single year, they have Adrian Peterson Day. Like, how big of an ego must you have to have Adrian Peterson Day every year? All right? So Peterson's like, yo, man, y'all don't stick by me. I'm Adrian Peterson. And everybody's saying, well, you should be happy they stuck with you in the first place. Except here's the thing. They are absolutely treating him like he matters that much. They are absolutely treating him like he's the face of the franchise. And you know they're treating him like he's the face of the franchise by the fact that they were begging him for the privilege of paying him $12.5 million to play this year. If that ain't the face of the franchise, I don't know what is. Seriously. I don't know what is. So he's the face of the franchise. So I get, if he truly believes he's the face of the franchise, why he would be upset that they bailed on him when the block got hot. But what I love about this, it's all bygones now, baby. It is all water under the bridge. And you know why it's water under the bridge? Because Adrian Peterson just wound up in a situation that a lot of people wind up in. And you know what that situation is? I really don't want to go work for these people, but I sure do want a paycheck. I would argue that perhaps 65, maybe 70% of the listening audience is in that situation right now. Now, you don't think of it as being like a contractual situation like Adrian Peterson's in. But at any point, man, if Adrian Peterson doesn't want to come to work, he doesn't have to come to work. Same way you don't want to go to work. You don't have to go to work. But you're going to work because you don't want to go to work. I mean, you might want to go to work, but you're not going to work because you want to go to work. You're going to work because you want to get paid. Think of all the places that you would go to get paid. Work's not hard to rationalize to yourself. So Adrian Peterson did all that kicking, did all that screaming, everything else, man. Adrian Peterson is back on the job like nothing ever happened. But one thing did happen when he came back to work. He talked a little bit about the therapy that he's undergone. The therapy he's undergone. Because it's clear in this. I don't see there's any way that you can really look at the Peterson case and just find a villain. That's just a blanket villain. I don't think that was there. You had somebody who was raised one way and then chose to raise his child the same way, never considering that the way that he was raised was wrong. And it sounds as though in doing the therapy and all this other stuff, he's learning some things and going about things differently. And if you're one of those people that got really upset with what happened with Adrian Peterson in the first place, I totally understand where you're coming from. But if you really cared about what made it a big thing, then that's the part that matters. You can't do anything about what was done. The true test on this dude is not going to be about what he did, but it's going to be about what he does. And it looks like he wants to do differently and do better in the future.
Bomani.
All guests join us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, including our next guest, who I have to thank a great deal for even being on this show in the first place, because he's been kind enough to have me on his television program a few times. He is the host of Outside the Lines and General American Statesman. His name is Bob Lee. Bob, what's going on?
Bomani, I remember the first time you appeared with us. I do believe you were sporting a stylish lid.
You know me well. You know me well. I mean, that was like 9 years ago now, man. One of us is getting old.
Yeah, that might have been back when you only had 7 or 8 economics degrees.
It's a while back. We're talking to Bob Lee, and I have to tell you, all of my friends have thoroughly enjoyed the FIFA coverage and seeing you on to talk about what's been going on, because it's an interesting situation that I think a lot of our audience did not know about before, and then you get enthralled by when you see all the numbers and just the level of graft and corruption. And today, Sepp Blatter quit. And that led you to quote Omar Little. Thank you for quoting Omar Little, first of all.
Well, we actually quoted Omar last week as well. So we kind of went back to the gift that keeps on giving. Those introductory quotes on every episode of The Wire. But come at the king, you best not miss. And that's what Prince Ali did last week. He missed, but he might be back for a second bite of the apple. But maybe Morris Levy will end up defending Sepp Blatter.
Well, what did you think with Sepp Blatter after being so defiant on Friday and saying he was the president of everyone, and then Tuesday he quits?
Well, he was never the president of me, last I checked. The minute we heard there was a press conference today, my gut told me something was up, because they had spent all weekend, FIFA, Ralph Kramding, Amina their way through explanations about this and that. And this morning he got up, and the South Africans had a very incriminating letter that took money right to his right-hand man, Blatter. So, and then they began postponing the press conference, and it was happening at 6 o'clock in Zurich. And I mean, if you're Sepp Blatter, 6 o'clock in Zurich, I mean, it's snifter of cognac time, right? So we knew something was up, and he took no questions. He's still in power, Bomani. He's still going to be there for a bit. Now the question comes up, tomorrow we may learn from federal court in New York the unsealing of some of the Chuck Blazer guilty plea. Some of it's been redacted. We may learn some more facts and some details. Maybe that information made its way to Switzerland, that this stuff was about to be released. But clearly, ABC News reported, but I mean, your intuition told you this anyway through last week, that clearly they're still looking at Blatter.
All right, we talked to Bob Lee of Outside the Lines. And just speaking generally about this story, we knew that FIFA was corrupt. And, of course, we know what's going on with Qatar and so many people losing their lives trying to make this World Cup happen there. But were you at all surprised or startled by some of the numbers that were thrown around? Like the idea that the South African Football Federation was supposed to pony up $10 million to one man, and then when they couldn't, FIFA just said, okay, we'll loan you the money.
Well, it was a back-end bribe that was coming out of South Africa, allegedly out of South Africa's cut to stage the games. But when you see contained in the indictment that next summer's Copa America Centenario, which is going to be Copa America from South America, moved up here, and the United States, Bomani, is the great ATM of soccer in this hemisphere. Mexico play a lot of their friendlies here. Colombia, whatever countries come here to play their friendlies because the ticket prices will generate a lot more money. But 1/3 of all the money involved in broadcast rights, supposedly through one middleman for the Copa America next summer, was in kicks and bribes, kickbacks and bribes. Astonishing.
I mean, that's what got me when I looked at all the numbers and everything that people were throwing around. And that's before, of course, Jack Warner decided to put up the Onion interview to try to defend his case. It's one thing where I hear people say we knew FIFA was corrupt. I had no idea that it was corrupt to the point that a man had an apartment in the Trump Tower for his cats.
Well, I am also told that he had 2 apartments and the cats kind of gravitated to one. I'm not trying to stand here and defend what was going on. I mean, everyone's fixating on the cat apartment, and I guess it makes a nice image. But according to the Daily News, they did some outstanding reporting on this back in November. This is a man who charged $29 million total on his Amex card, who they had in that particular edition of the Daily News. Every couple of years or year, you're supposed to get your Social Security's earnings report from the IRS, and under the category of reported federal income, there were like a string of zeros. He didn't even file, didn't declare any income, so he was a prime candidate to become a state's witness.
We're talking to Bob Lee of Outside the Lines here at ESPN, and you mentioned that Prince Ali might wind up getting another chance at being the president of FIFA, but the fact that Blatter won seems to indicate there were a lot of people who liked the way that Blatter was running FIFA. How possible is there to have change if the people who enabled Blatter are still going to be around?
Well, Ali certainly indicated today he's available to run again. Whether he runs is another matter. And we are months away from a new election. It's going to make all those Republican candidates in the back of the Volkswagen bus look like, just a couple of folks, because all sorts of people are going to float their names. And you raise an interesting point, because there still is a divide in the world of soccer, certainly, in the FIFA Congress, between the first world, Western and Eastern Europe, and North America, and the developing world. And there are still portions of this globe, and significant portions of them, and every nation gets, and every little principality gets one vote, where Blatter's largesse paid off and earned him loyalty. They rely on that money coming from FIFA. And he did them good, they did him good. They kept voting him back into so it's not a given that you're going to see a charismatic, new, strategically resplendent and emboldened leader to come in here and kick butt and take names. As Prince Ali said in his last Friday in his campaign speech, his 15-minute address to the delegates, reform is not a moment, reform is a process, and that's very true.
Well, is it possible to have a new FIFA that can serve the interest of the larger powers while also giving a bit more credence to the concerns of those smaller countries?
Well, that's a very delicate question. I mean, it's like the UN General Assembly. I mean, when the small countries, again, have equal power as any other nation, and there is you get back to issues of colonialism, of racism, of economic inequality, of who's calling the shots. Blatter won a lot of goodwill for putting that, now how it got there, for putting the 2010 World Cup into South Africa, and openly talked about himself to intimates about being a candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize. And when you just look at some of the high tops, the treetop things that he did, you could make a case for this guy. Now, when you start to scrutinize it, it doesn't hold up. But I think you've touched on something. You've got the concentration of soccer money in Western Europe, certainly, where the UEFA holds great sway, and it's not as big a game here in North America. And then the balance of the world, where the money just is not as prominent.
Well, last question for Bob Lee of Outside the Lines here on ESPN. How much did you enjoy tearing up that FIFA release on television as it got into your hands?
I walked into my office today. I hadn't been in several days, and it was still sitting in my pile of stuff, my notes and my scripts from last week. It's up there on my billboard. I don't think I was off the reservation. Hadn't got off the handle here. I think Shaq was a little worried I was going to just flip out and maybe become a problem child. But I'm saving the pieces, and I want to find the right charitable cause. Maybe we will have them framed and sell the several pieces, and I'll authenticate them for somebody.
I feel like even if you did flip out, though, you would flip out in the same dulcet tones. Like, I think maybe you would be a better fit for this 9 o'clock hour on the radio, because you are quiet storming it up, but you sound like this all times of day. Like you're quietly the coolest dude at ESPN.
Okay, well, I'll leave you with that pleasant fiction.
Bob Lee, Outside the Lines, ESPN. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Bomani, always a pleasure to be with you, my friend.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
I'm a little bit disappointed that Sepp Blatter quit his job. And the reason I'm a little bit disappointed that Sepp Blatter quit his job, hey, man, I had just started rooting for the dude. That's right. Look. I don't know how you guys operate, and we all have different things that we look into and different things that we respect. And I readily admit I have a peculiar respect for outright shamelessness. Like when you are willing to be the guy to ride along with something that is just flat out shameless, I admit I love it. Love it. I don't even really have to agree with whatever it is that you're saying, but the fact that you'll look me in the eye and tell me that nonsense, I have to have a certain level of respect for it. Like, for example, I'm going to tell you a story about my own life, right? So one day when I was in high school, there's this girl that had this kind of uncomfortable sort of crush on me, and I thought she might have been a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Anyway, my homeboy, she was trying to track me down, and she had already once showed up at my house without me ever telling her where I lived. Yeah. So anyway, my homeboy was like, hey, man, old girl called the house, but I told her that you were out of town for the weekend. I said, great. We go to the mall, and we see her. So I tried to tell my man to turn around. He didn't have enough time. I ran away, right? And I ran away, and I hid for like an hour just walking around the mall until finally I ran back up. I came back upon the two of them, and I'm getting ready to just take my medicine. And I walk up, and I hear my homeboy, and he goes, hey, yo, Patrice. And I instantly knew what time it was. I kept walking up, and my boy goes, hey, this is Bomani's twin brother, Patrice. And she goes, you're twins? I'm like, yeah, man, I don't even really like that dude, man, always getting all the girls and everything else. You know, and I just became my twin brother. And a couple other times I saw her, and I would alternate between which one of us I would be. Sometimes I would be myself. Sometimes I would be my twin brother. Now, if I found out that somebody had done something like that to me, if I found out that a girl had pretended to be her twin sister to shake me, I would have so much respect for the outright shamelessness of such a maneuver. I mean, I'm not supporting what they're doing. I'm not on board with it. But you just have to have a respect for the willingness. Like, Bobby Petrino, for example. I had a certain respect for the shamelessness of Bobby Petrino. Do you know how much focus it takes to lay in a ditch with a broken neck after you have fallen off of your motorcycle and while your face is in the mud in rural Arkansas on the back roads? You're not worried about whether or not you're going to die. You're not worried about whether or not you're paralyzed. You're immediately cooking up lies. You have already moved on and moved forward to thinking about the lie that you're going to tell when you get to the hospital. Look. If you can respect Isaiah Thomas scoring 25 points on a broken ankle, you got to have it on a severely sprained ankle. You got to respect Bobby Petrino cooking up them lies with a broken neck. He almost got away with it. Somebody just happened to come across the bike. He almost made it work. He had cooked up a plan where he had decided where to go to meet up with his specially chosen police officer who was going to take him to the hospital that they knew about and get him in. You got to respect it. Like, you got to fire him for it, too. But you got to respect it. That's how I felt when Sepp Blatter, through all of this, when the indictment and everything else, had the all-damn-dacity to get in front of the FIFA Congress, which was effectively standing in front of the entire world and saying, I am the president of everyone. The president of everyone. And now he's gone? Like, already? Think about this for a second. The only reason for that man to really quit is he's got enough. Look, an indictment is coming. Somebody is going to snitch on Sepp Blatter. And you know how I know that somebody's going to snitch on Sepp Blatter? Because none of the people that they have indicted are cut out for jail. Not a single one of them. You can come up there talking to them about that club fed and down. No. They ain't trying to hear that. Not a single one of them is about that jail life. Somebody's going to tell on Sepp Blatter so fast. And I mean so fast. But if he's already quit as the dude from FIFA, we're not going to get any more ridiculous Sepp Blatter quotes anymore. Like, look. I understand the idea that Blatter ran this highly corrupt organization, and as a result of running this highly corrupt organization, that you had to get rid of him. I totally get that, but I'm not going to pretend for a second like what FIFA was doing had any effect on my life. Like, I got a problem with what's going on in Qatar because of the people who are dying, and the way that they handle business over there. I do not like that. I have a problem with that. There are questions about the forced labor and what's going on in Russia. I have a problem with that, most certainly. I don't want you to get me wrong. But, that's not what the federal government was doing. They're talking about kickbacks and bribes and stuff. And, I don't care. No, I don't care about that. I mean, it's wrong. Like, send him to jail. I mean, you get that part. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying that ain't the sort of thing that gets me amped up, doesn't get me charged up. Like, if the reason that you want Sepp Blatter out of there from FIFA is because they were taking bribes, you telling me that we're going to have to give up all of these jokes because y'all are offended by a bribe? Like, do you realize that if Sepp Blatter was doing business the way he did it in Louisiana, that as soon as he got out of jail, they would make him the governor again? And then he could go to jail one more time and get out, and they would make him the governor again? And everybody listening to Louisiana knows exactly what I'm talking about. My daddy is from Oakdale, and you know who's been hanging out there for the last few years. Yeah, that's right. That's just how it goes. Like, in some places, this kind of business is just what it is. I was just getting amped up and charged up and ready with all these Sepp Blatter jokes. We, on Highly Questionable, just very recently found that video of Sepp Blatter falling off that stage. You ever seen that video of Sepp Blatter falling off the stage? Oh, yeah. Sepp Blatter fell off the stage. You guys who have not seen this, perhaps you remember in 1996, Bob Dole was giving a speech in a little town called Chico, California. Yeah. And he was walking, and then boosh, he fell off the stage. And it was a real problem when that happened because, Bob Dole, I understand that you think of Bob Dole now. You're like, wow, Bob Dole's old. Bob Dole's been old forever. Like, Bob Dole is like the Cicely Tyson of Congress. I don't know when Bob Dole wasn't old, right? Bob Dole in 1996, we were talking about he was too old. 20 years later, Bob Dole is still alive. Anyway, Bob Dole fell off that stage, and Bob Dole was too old to be falling off the stage, and people immediately laughing. Like, you had to make sure that Bob Dole didn't break his hip. That's what it looked like when Sepp Blatter fell off the stage. It looked just like that time that Bob Dole fell off the stage. That's the part of the Sepp Blatter era of FIFA that we will be able to take with us forever, is the video of him falling off the stage. Because, as we all know, falling is always funny. Like, if they didn't get Sepp Blatter out of there after he fell, because look, man, after you fall off the stage, I can't respect you anymore, right? They couldn't get him out of there for that. Only an indictment is going to get him out of there now. So, I understand. All you guys that are real big soccer fans are very excited about the fact that Sepp Blatter is gone and you're looking for a brand new day in FIFA. And maybe you will get a brand new day in FIFA. I feel like whoever's in charge of FIFA is something that I don't even really need to know. Like, talk about a piece of information that is awfully irrelevant to me. But just as so many of us just learned about who all the principals were and who all the important figures were and everything else, we lost the most entertaining thing in soccer. Best of luck, Sepp. Best of luck.
Bomani.
8 days in between NBA playoff games. Not the best news in the world for your nighttime radio host. That kind of interferes with, the stuff to talk about. Like, I'd never be a guy to wish for anyone to go to jail per se, but if anyone did want to go to jail in a provocative way, I'd be here to talk about it. Because it ain't like I got basketball. But Shaquille O'Neal went on the Dan Patrick show, and he was talking about LeBron and Kobe and comparing the two of them, and he said that he would rather play with Kobe in his prime than LeBron in his prime. Now, Shaq, it's worth noting, played with Kobe for a lot longer. He played with LeBron for like parts of that 2010 season. And I say parts because Shaq was hurt for so much of it. By the way, how long ago was 2010? 2010 was so long ago that LeBron James was playing with Shaquille O'Neal, and the reason that the Cavs got Shaquille O'Neal was that they could not win the East without having someone who could single cover Dwight Howard. That's how long 5 years ago was. All right? Anyway, Shaq and LeBron did play together for that year. Now, Shaq says he'd take Kobe over LeBron. Now, I don't really want to get into a LeBron versus Kobe discussion. I mean, I might, but a big part of the reason why I don't really want to get into that discussion is I don't even understand how this one is a contest. It's LeBron, 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 LeBron. The thing about Kobe is Kobe has a style of play that I think is really easy for people to respect. So if you have a certain archetype in your mind for the lead dog, and by that archetype I really mean Michael Jordan, then Kobe's that guy for you. Like, if you're looking for the next best thing to Michael Jordan, a reasonable facsimile of Michael Jordan, then Kobe's your guy. And I'm not saying that like, oh, Kobe copied off of Michael Jordan. I mean, that wouldn't be the worst idea anybody ever had, by the way, copying off of Michael Jordan. That's not what I'm saying. But Kobe fits that. LeBron, not so much. It's more a Magic Johnson, Larry Bird sort of thing. In fact, I'd say more Larry Bird than Magic Johnson because, and the reason I say that is, not that Magic was incapable of scoring, but when you're actually playing point guard, you're just not looking to score the way that LeBron has looked to score. Nor is Magic, like, I mean, you could bring up, if you wanted to, the, the game 6 in 1980 when Kareem was hurt. But with Magic, he never had to be that guy to score. Like, if games came up, he needed him to jump in, that's fine. But there's never really been a time that a team didn't need LeBron James to score 27, 28 points a game for them to be good. You know, that might be a little high, but you understand what I'm saying. That's always been it, right? He's more like Larry Bird and Magic Johnson than Michael Jordan, but we're at that point now where, because Michael Jordan was so successful in the 1990s with the Bulls, that's what you should be like. So we get into narrative stuff with Kobe Bryant. We talk about him having killer instinct. We talk about him and his willingness to take the shot at the end. He's not scared to take the shot at the end. Like, somehow we don't care if he actually makes the shot at the end. All we care about is whether he's got the courage to take the shot at the end. That's it. Now, if you want to go into advanced statistics and stuff like that, then there's really no comparison. LeBron James is a better player than Kobe Bryant. That's it. I mean, it's right there. LeBron gives you so many different things and did so many things. But here's what I find interesting, and the reason that I bring this up. As much as LeBron has had to fight against narrative for the better part of his career, he's had to fight against the narrative. He's had to fight against the idea that there's a certain way for you to be that star basketball player, right? As much as he's fought against that idea, he sure seems to be buying into it now. Like, when LeBron talks about how he's never played better than he has this year, and you can start talking all this mentally and what he sees and everything else, end of the day, it's about what you actually put down on the court. And this version of LeBron James is probably, when was LeBron James, I'm about to phrase this poorly, but he was better all 4 of those years in Miami than he's been this season. I think he was better his last 2 years in Cleveland than he's been in this season. But what's happened this season is now we're on the LeBron is willing guys to victory. That's the stuff that we're getting now. Like, LeBron shoots like less than 20% for three-point range. Now you give him credit for finding other ways to get the job done. Like, he's all in on this now. He's all in on it. He's the guy that before would talk about how I'm going to make the right basketball play, and we could always go back to his ungodly efficiency numbers and everything else. That's not there this year. That's not the guy that we've had in this postseason. And it's interesting because now we like that guy more. We just do. Like, I want to see what happens if they don't win the championship. Because that would be a significant part of this narrative. But you know how LeBron pulled this off? All he had to do was go back to Cleveland. That was it. All he had to do was go back to Cleveland. He went back to Cleveland. The bygones became bygones with so many people. And suddenly the standard that we evaluated LeBron on, it went away. It went away. So this Cleveland team has certainly had issues, and they certainly do not have Kevin Love. But you tell me this. That year that Chris Bosh had that abdominal injury and came back, I want to say it was in the Boston series that he came back, and he hit that shot pretty much to ice Game 7. If Chris Bosh, who I think is a better player than Kevin Love, if Chris Bosh had not played for that series against Boston till the end, and the Heat had lost, you think anybody's cutting LeBron slack for Chris Bosh not being there? Because I don't. I don't think it goes that way. If they don't win it this year, I think people are going to be so much kinder than they were about it when he came to Miami, even though going back to Cleveland was effectively about the same thing. He could put together the best option to win going back there. Yeah, it's home, I understand that. But if home had nothing but scrubs, if home didn't have Kyrie Irving, if home didn't have assets, he isn't going home. But he went back, he wrote the letter, he gave the story that people wanted. And now what was unfair in the way that he was evaluated in Miami, I think has pretty much gone away. Like, I've been surprised at the overwhelming level of praise that LeBron has gotten through this postseason. And look, they don't get as far as they've gotten without him. Duh. No-brainer on that one. But you don't hear so much about how beat up the Hawks were when people talk about the Cavs winning this one. I got a pretty good feeling you would have heard about that had he been in Miami. Everything's just flipped. It's just flipped. So Shaq can say he'd rather have Kobe. I think that's largely based on narrative stuff. I think it's based on, like I say, that notion of a killer instinct. And see, what I think that Kobe has, that if you're a guy like Shaq that you have to like, what he's got is that the shot that you're going to get with 10 minutes left in the game is the same shot that you're going to get with 10 seconds left in the game. He's not going to be scared. And that's really, I do think that is an important thing. That if you give him a shot, you're going to get a shot. You're not going to get a scared shot. I totally get wanting to have that guy on your team and wanting to play with him. But I also think that's in large part narrative. I just think it's funny, though. Now, LeBron is starting to get the benefit of the doubt on the narrative. The year after his team got put out in 5 games, when they were nice, beat up, and dinged up, but they never would have gotten the same benefit of the doubt because he played in Miami. I don't understand why it works that way beyond the fact that he wrote a letter, made you feel good, went back home, and you fell for it. Either you didn't mean it before or you don't mean it now. It can't be both.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt. Frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
We're presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests join us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, including our next guest, one of the best young sports writers we got out here these days. He writes for the Charlotte Observer, covering the Carolina Panthers, among other things. His name is Jonathan Jones. John, what's going on?
Bo, yeah, everything is great. How are you?
Hey, man, doing all right. Great to talk to you. And today, Cam Newton got his money. This is a bit of a polarizing topic among people, but was there ever a chance that the Panthers were not going to substantially compensate him?
You know, going back like 2 years, I would say that there was a chance when Dave Gettleman, he had just become the general manager of the Panthers. He'd come from the Giants of 14 years, won a couple Super Bowls there with Eli Manning. He becomes the new captain in town, the new sheriff, and everyone kind of wonders, okay, well, is Cam his guy? Is Ron Rivera his guy? And so after a while, we start seeing Cam, and they win. They had that 12-4 year there in 2013. And then last year, obviously, they took a step back. Cam, with all the injuries and whatnot, with the offensive tackles that they trotted out there to protect him. But they still went to the playoffs back-to-back years. And so then Dave Gettleman finally started saying, yeah, he's our franchise guy, he's my guy. And then it was a matter of time before this was going to happen.
Well, given his injuries, how would you characterize Cam's play last year?
It was sporadic. I mean, you got to understand, he had that off-season ankle surgery that happened like 2 months after it really should have happened. It probably should have happened after they lost in the playoffs to San Francisco in January. They waited until March for him to do it. He participated in the Pro Bowl, and so that kind of set him back a little bit. Into training camp, he was a little bit limited, and then, of course, he had those cracked ribs in the exhibition against New England, missed the first game of the season. And I think we all remember that Monday Night Football game against the Eagles where he was sacked 9 times. Dude was just banged up, and you're wondering when are they going to take him out of the game. Well, just as he starts getting healthy, then that's when he flips his car on the interstate overpass, and that's when he fractures his lower back and misses another game. So he was never really right throughout the season with the injuries. And then, of course, all the sacks that he took last year because of that offensive line. He wasn't all that good last year.
All right, we're talking to Jonathan Jones of the Charlotte Observer. He was not that good. The team made the playoffs in large part because somebody from that division had to make the playoffs. How difficult will it be for them to improve around Cam, given that he's now gotten his money?
I think that they're actually going to be able to improve playing. I mean, you look at the piece that they have on offense. Michael Orr at left tackle. He's a bit of an upgrade over Byron Bell. They finally figured out what they're doing at the guard position, so you're able to protect Cam. And then you look in the backfield, Jonathan Stewart, if he rushes the way that he did the last 5-6 games of last season, he's looking like the guy out of the Pacific Northwest that we all thought he could be back in high school. And then the guys that he's throwing to, obviously Kelvin Benjamin. You got Devin Funchess, where if he can throw in 700 yards receiving this year, that's going to be pretty good. Greg Olsen coming off that Pro Bowl year. So he has folks to throw to, and then we can't forget about that defense that's really kept them in a lot of games. The Panthers, along with the Seahawks and the 49ers, are the only three teams in the past 3 years to finish in the top 10 in the NFL in total defense. And so that has a lot to do with Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis. So Cam doesn't really have to score much more than 17, 20 points to win games, and that helps out a lot.
We're talking to Jonathan Jones of the Charlotte Observer. Now, has there been any thought that now that they're paying Cam Newton this much money that maybe they might dial back some of the rushing workload?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. And so what we've seen is they've started to dial it back over the past couple of years. You go back to 2011 when he comes into the NFL. And for any rookie quarterback, it's very difficult to, as you well know, to win in the NFL and be able to be effective. So Rob Chudzinski, the offensive coordinator with the Panthers back then, he brought in the zone read and kind of popularized it in the NFL. Well, that worked in 2011, won him Offensive Rookie of the Year. He had a lot of passing yards, had a lot of rushing yards. But they found that Cam's not going to be the quarterback of the future if they keep doing these zone reads every other play for the next 15 years. So you started to see it in mid-2012, early 2013, they said, all right, we got to dial this back a little bit. And so they want him to be more of a pocket passer. I think last year they really wanted it to happen, but, of course, the injuries and the instability along the offensive line. This year, with the stability and with a healthy Cam, that's when they're really going to implement it along with that money. They want to protect their investment. But I talked to Ron Rivera today, and I asked him that specific question. And he said, look, we still want Cam to be Cam. They know that he is a dynamic quarterback, and so they don't want to take away that dual threat ability, but they don't want him out there taking 500 hits a season.
Well, how far along is he in his development as a pocket pass?
So that's the thing. You would hope after 4 years that he would stop overthrowing receivers as regularly as he does. You'd want his completion percentage to be up a little higher, on that 63 to 65%. It's not there yet, but I think it does have the potential to get there. You'd really want to see a little bit more out of Cam in his development. Last year, it's such a fluke because it really throws everything off. But if I don't see it in the first half of this season, then I'm going to start to worry. But I will say this. We've seen him in one OTA practice so far. I don't know if I really saw him miss more than maybe 2 deep balls in 2 hours. He was hitting everybody. Greg Olsen even had a couple 20-plus yard receptions. He looked pretty good, healthy in OTAs.
Well, much of that is mechanical, though, isn't it? Because he still seems to have that spread quarterback problem of trying to throw the ball off his back foot and just gun it in there as hard as he can.
Right. I mean, he really loves his arm. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He loves his arm. He trusts his arm. And so he says, you know what, I don't care how quickly that window is closing, I can still fit it in there, and I can fit it in off my back foot because I have the strongest arm in the NFL. I think that's what goes through Cam's head a lot of times. Well, that leads to a lot of plays where we're like, oh, wow. And then I have to, in the press box, look up and watch it on the screen one more time to make sure that I saw what I saw. But then it also leads to a lot of incompletions and a couple tip passes that turn into interceptions. So, if he can just become, a little bit more prototypical in that sense, I think that you're going to see higher completion percentages, fewer interceptions.
All right, talking to Jonathan Jones of the Charlotte Observer. What's the tenor been around town about Cam getting this extension? I think it's something that probably people had to see coming, but he still remains a bit of a polarizing figure in Charlotte.
He absolutely does. You would think that, this is a team, this is a franchise, 21 years. They've never really had a franchise quarterback. I don't think that's any disrespect to Jake Delhomme, who took him to a Super Bowl, but he was basically a backup who was thrust into a starting role and did very well for 4 or 5 years, but ultimately he wasn't that guy. And so Cam is that guy, and I think, listen, a lot of people when he came to Charlotte weren't that crazy about him. In Charlotte and outside of Charlotte, I think we all remember that back from 2011. But it has remained the same. It's pretty amazing to hear the voicemails that I get or the emails I receive or when I turn on the radio in Charlotte to hear the callers that a lot of them don't really understand, don't really care much for Cam. I think that Cam is a top 12 quarterback in the NFL. These guys aren't falling off trees, and there is absolutely, I absolutely understand why the Panthers paid him $100 million to keep him in Carolina because, again, these guys aren't falling off trees. And you go back and you look at the free agent market for quarterbacks these past 2 years. You know who's been the biggest domino that's fallen before every other quarterback's taken? Is Josh McCown. And the Panthers are over there looking at it saying, okay, if not Cam, then who? And they don't want to enter an offseason where Cam goes off to the Arizona Cardinals, the New York Jets, whoever will pay him a lot of money, and they have to end up with Josh McCown.
Is that pretty much all it took to swing Gettleman? Was a quick look around the league and he got his mind back right?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, as much as we like Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, do you really want to start over and draft a rookie quarterback in the first round? Do you really have to go out there and try to get Kyle Orton, Josh McCown, or even kick the tires on some other guys? I won't even mention that one guy who used to play at Florida, maybe Tim Tebow. No, you absolutely look around and you say, all right, we got a guy. He's taking us to 2 back-to-back playoff appearances. We're going to stay with him.
Jonathan Jones of the Charlotte Observer. Check out his work. He covers the Carolina Panthers. My man, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
All right, so appreciate it.
Bomani.
I don't think I've talked about Dwayne Wade in Miami on the show so far, but even if I had, I'm going to talk about it anyway because you probably weren't listening yesterday. So, as you may have seen, Dwayne Wade and the Heat are at a bit of an impasse when it comes to contract negotiations. Ethan Skolnick of Bleacher Report, who works out of here, used to cover the Heat for the Palm Beach Post, has said that the Heat are basically offering Dwayne Wade, if he opts out of this $16 million on his contract next year, 3 years, $30 million. $10 million a year, or put differently, less than Gerald Wallace makes. Now, something to note about Dwayne Wade that's really easy to forget. He's still good. He's not what he was, but he's still good. He just can't play that many games. So when LeBron was making his decision, I understood why he left, if for no other reason than if you look up and see all the things the Heat had to do to get what they got out of Dwayne Wade in the playoffs in 2014, he only played 54 games in the regular season, and that's what they had to. That's what you got after him only playing 54 games. Like, you couldn't trust that. So I understand any level of apprehension the Heat would have about giving him his money. The problem is the Heat sell family. That's their hustle. They sell family. When they got LeBron James down here, they sold it to him as become part of the family. If the family can't do right by Dwayne Wade, why would anybody ever trust the family? Like, that's the greatest player in franchise history. That's the dude they introduced last in the introductions before games the whole time that LeBron James was here, because it may have been LeBron's team. It remains Dwayne Wade's city. And I don't think that's ever going to change. So the Heat are in one of those situations where you got to decide whether you're going to do something irrational in order to do right by your franchise player or the guy that's been your franchise player. Now, the Lakers did that. The Lakers gave Kobe Bryant, was it 2 years, $48 million, and they're not going to get anything out of it. You do that because you feel like Kobe deserved it. And never mind the fact, by the way, Kobe has never had to take one of these discount contracts. Like, Kobe got in the league in 1996. He started getting paid according to a different salary paradigm. Kobe was out here making $30+ million with a no-trade clause, and the Lakers still gave him 24 for the last 2. And the reason was you couldn't win a PR war in L.A. against Kobe Bryant. And the Lakers looked at it as, this is the sort of thing that we do for our star players, and we want our star players to know that, because how we treat this star player will affect the next star player that we get. Well, Miami showed that it could get star players, and Miami has been a player in free agency since they got out of the shadow of expansion. Part of that, of course, is because people like coming to Miami, like living in Miami with a pocket full of money, being 26, 27 years old. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that if you're one of those cats, right? It doesn't. However, you think Kevin Durant is going to want to come to Miami if you don't do right by D. Wade? Like, LeBron couldn't get what he wanted out of the Heat. LeBron couldn't get the star treatment that he felt he deserved. Couldn't get Pat Riley to let his homeboys walk around the arena, as if that's a lot to ask. So you think Kevin Durant, if you do wrong by Dwayne Wade, is going to be talking about coming here? Who's going to be talking about coming here if you're not going to do right by your best players? Because one thing about it, if you look at star players, hey, if Pat Riley ain't bending for LeBron James, he's not bending for any of y'all. And people want the bending. I don't think you can really blame them for the fact that they want the bending. If you're a star, you want a team that's going to bend a little bit for you. But if you can't get a team that's going to bend a little bit for you, you would at least like to have a team that might, I don't know, treat you right. And that's what the Heat are going to have to measure. That's what the Heat are going to have to decide. Dan Le Batard, with whom I host a TV show called Highly Questionable, Dan made a great point that Alonzo Mourning wound up in a situation with the Heat where the Heat didn't want to pay him. They wound up trading him out of town. He wound up coming back when he was older and got a championship playing for Miami, and now Alonzo works in the Miami front office. Like, you can get over it. You know, you can move past it. Guys can. But right now, D. Wade is salty. And Alonzo Mourning, as good of a player as he was, Alonzo Mourning ain't D. Wade. He never has been D. Wade, and he doesn't mean to the team what Dwayne Wade does. He doesn't mean to the franchise what Dwayne Wade does. And Alonzo Mourning is a great man who does great charity work, and he does the summer weekend, and it's always a big deal. So I'm not saying that Alonzo Mourning was irrelevant. Nothing of the sort. He's a Hall of Fame player. And prior to D. Wade, I think you'd have to say that Alonzo Mourning was the greatest player in the history of a franchise, by the way, that I would argue has a little bit more history than people realize. I mean, they've got 3 championships. You look at what happened in the 90s after Pat Riley got there. Like, this has been a very, very, very successful NBA franchise. There have been some hiccups, certainly, but they've been a relevant player in the NBA for the better part of the last 20 years. Really, for the better part of the last 20 years, they've been a relevant NBA player. How's that go if you can't really get guys to come? How's that go? And so if I'm the Heat, I'm absolutely looking at the case with Dwayne Wade, and I'm looking toward the future. And you want to try to win a championship as soon as you possibly can, I totally understand that. You want to try to win a championship within a 3 or 4 year window, or you want to keep the window open for you to win championships for years and years and years because you're Miami, you've got great weather, and you can attract top-notch free agents. I'd go for B. That's what it would be for me, especially if I'm Pat Riley and I have such an aversion to rookies that it becomes difficult to draft guys and then go from there. Speaking of drafting guys, by the way, never forget, Pat Riley did not want to draft Dwayne Wade in 2003. He wanted the Heat to take Chris Caitlyn. And I'm not really that upset with him over it necessarily. The argument was to take big over small, and every player that had gone in their draft before D. Wade was big. Like all of them. I mean, LeBron, Darko, Carmelo, I would say for purposes of this discussion, would count as a big. Chris Bosh. And then you got to Dwayne Wade. Riley would have gone with, if they left Riley to it, he'd have messed around and taken Chris Kaman. They took Dwayne Wade, it all worked. But Dwayne Wade, look, it's rare that you wind up in a situation with Pat Riley with a rookie that he wants to play. D. Wade wound up being that guy. But they don't like building that way. That's not how they want to do it. So it might cost you more money than you want to spend, but the greatest player in the history of your franchise wants you to do right by him. You got to at least try. Like, if you got to do all the moving, I think that you got to be the one to do all the moving. But you've at least got to try to do right by Dwayne Wade, even if he's falling apart. But as he's falling apart, dude, he still averaged 21 points a game last year. Like, he's still a good player, even if he's not a great player. Glad I'm not the one that has to make the decision, because it sounds to me like they're just going to have to overpay the dude. Just how the game works sometimes. I will say this, though. A 36-year-old Dwayne Wade? Yeah, that doesn't sound like entertaining basketball at all.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Weeknights from 9 to 11 Eastern or on demand at ESPNradio.com.